Welcome to Within the Frame, where we bring the most pressing issues across the globe into focus. I'm Kim Mok-yeon. South Korea and the United States are deepening their military cooperation with nuclear-powered submarines on the table and wartime operational control once again under discussion. Amid simmering regional tensions, President Donald Trump's renewed support signals a possible strategic shift in Washington's approach. And at the same time, Seoul is weighing its next steps, both on the defense front and its outreach to North Korea. To help us break this down, we are joined in the studio by Go Myong-hyun, Senior Research Fellow at the Institute for National Security Strategy. A big welcome.
Good to see you.
And also joining us online is Joseph Detrani, the former U.S. Special Envoy for Six-Party Talks. Good to see you.
Nice seeing you.
So let's start a discussion with Dr. Go with the latest security consultative meeting, of course. So the two countries discussed a range of defense issues, including Korea's potential introduction of the nuclear-powered submarines. We're expecting a joint statement soon. So which part of the latest meeting stood out for you the most, Dr.
Well, besides the nuclear propelled submarine technology issue, I think there's been some remarkable highlights from this meeting. For instance, it's becoming increasingly clear that the nature of the alliance is going to change, perhaps drastically. So the Secretary Hexes made it clear that from now on, the United States will be primarily providing exit deterrence for South Korea against the North Korea's nuclear threat, whereas South Korea is going to take charge when it comes to its own conventional defense against the North Korean threat. So the idea that the allies of the United States will have to bear more responsibility for their defense is going to be fully operational in Korea very soon. And the surprise that didn't just come from the U.S. side. There was also an announcement from the Korean side saying that it's committed to complete the transfer of the wartime operational control of the South Korean forces before the end of President Lee Jae-myung's tenure. So it's an accelerated process. It's actually quite a big change because the OPCON transfer was taking place gradually based on conditions. So South Korea would have to meet certain conditions of operationality and also as a capability to complete the OPCON transfer process. But now it's no longer going to be about on condition based. It's going to be based on a timetable, and it's an accelerated schedule. So if President Lee lives up to this commitment, they will see full transfer of wartime operational control of the South Korean forces within 4 years or 5 years, if you depend on how you calculate this number. So these are two major announcements, in my opinion, should receive more attention.
Right, so it definitely seemed to show a little bit of more close alliance between the two sides. Now, building on this, Secretary of War Hegseth reconfirmed President Trump's approval of Seoul's push to acquire this nuclear-powered submarines. And given that this technology is considered one of America's most closely guarded missile assets, some people say this approval is highly unusual. I wonder what's your thoughts on this, Ambassador Detrani? What's behind this green light?
No, I think it's indicative of the relationship we have with the Republic of Korea. We're close allies, and the threat from the DPRK is real. We saw that even during the visit of President Donald Trump to the ROK with their launching of ballistic missiles. So yeah, I think it's indicative, and it's the right decision, in my view, to show that not only are we close allies, but we're confronting a threat, a real threat, if you will, a nuclear threat from the North Korea. And given the region and what's happening in the region with the South China Sea, Taiwan, etc., there are a lot of issues out there. So yeah, I think this was the right decision. We're such close allies. Nuclear-powered submarines gives the ROK significant capabilities that, if you will, the more conventional submarines do not have, whether it's electric or what have you. The reach, the deterrent aspects to it are immense. So it's a powerful statement, but also a significant capability that the ROK now has as we move forward with the transfer of this very unique, very, very important nuclear-powered submarine technology to the ROK.
Right, so this latest summit definitely seemed to have strengthened the bond between the two countries. Now, even though, the two countries appear to agree in principle on this nuclear submarine project, there seems to be still some differences in the details. Dr. Go, could you tell us the main sticking points and some technical challenges that build these submarines?
Well, the differences in details are very important. That's very significant ramifications. For instance, from the language of the statement that came out during the opening remarks of preceding the actual summit meeting in Gyeongju between President Lee and President Trump, South Korea's request was very limited. It was just limited to acquiring the South Korea's own right to enrich fuel for nuclear submarine. Didn't really include a request to build or a request to the United States to build a nuclear submarine by the United States. It was just about enrichment rights as well as acquiring permission from the United States to use nuclear fuel for submarines built by Korea, presumably. But then what President Trump said later was that the United States would build this submarine in the United States. So even though it looks like it's not that different from the permission that the South Korea request, has a huge ramifications. So if the submarines are built in the United States, it's likely that the United States is not going to allow South Korea to enrich its own uranium. So it's a possibility. It's not confirmed or denied. So there's that distinct possibility that the United States will be building the submarine for South Korea, but without sharing not just the technology, but giving South Korea the right to enrich its own nuclear fuel. So this is not something that South Korea wants. So this is a very important sticking point, I believe. And second is that if the United States is the one that builds a submarine in the United States, then South Korea won't be able to acquire the know-how and technology to build its own nuclear submarine. And the operational requirements for nuclear submarine for South Korea is quite different from the ones for the United States. For the United States, it's about second strike capability. The United States the nuclear submarines, there are two types, but then overall, it's about the strategic capability. For South Korea, it's less about strategic capability. It's about the fact that it's really about tracking North Korea and also President Lee said Chinese submarines in the environs of the South Korean peninsula, not in the major oceans around the world. So different ranges, different scales, different scopes. So, but then if these submarines are built in the United States, chances that it's not going to meet South Korea's desire or the operational requirements. So this is a very important point, where this is going to be built. So definitely. I think this is going to be further discussed in the coming days.
Right, so it's really kind of unsettled, so we'll have to keep close tabs on where the location, on where would it be built, and on whether this technical technologies would be shared with Korea as well. But let's look a little bit broader into the region. So Ambassador Detrani, how would you see Korea's move towards nuclear-powered submarines affecting the security dynamics around the Korean peninsula? What kind of message could it send?
Well, it's a powerful message. And the message is that not only are we talking about extended nuclear deterrence commitments to the Republic of Korea from the United States, but we're talking about, if you will, permitting the ROK to have nuclear-powered submarines. And again, the reach and the significance of nuclear-powered submarines is just immense. As Dr. Go indicated, it's not only on the deterrence side, but it's also to project capabilities, significant capabilities. It gives you greater reach, the stealth aspects to it, second strike capabilities, etc. You could just go down the list. Obviously, these nuclear-powered submarines will have conventional weapons. We're not talking about nuclear weapons and so forth. But nonetheless, just having this capability, it's a strong message to the North Korea, to the DPRK, but also to the region, to China and to others, that the United States is not only a very close ally of the Republic of Korea, but will do everything to enhance the Republic of Korea's capabilities to not only defend themselves, but also to help in projecting power to ensure that the region is safe and secure for all respective countries.
Definitely. Now, another key item on the agenda was the transfer of the wartime operational control that you've mentioned, Dr. Go. Well, this move could bring South Korea closer to self-reliance. There's also concerns that it may weaken joint defense posture with America. What's your perspective on this?
Well, so clearly there's a certain trade-off. So with the more with the transfer of the wartime operational control to South Korea, clearly South Korea will have to rely more on its own capabilities, less on the United States, and that was very much the message said by Secretary Hicks in his visit. So in that sense, I think it's inevitable that South Korea and the United States will have to somehow re-accommodate each other's demands and expectations for the South Korea's defense as well as the wider regional security. But I think this was long overdue. I think Secretary Hicks has indicated South Korea is more than capable to fend off North Korea's threat now. But I think there's also concern that the South Korea may be too autonomous, so to speak, and deviate too much from the United States. So I think, though, I mean, what we are seeing is that the confirmation over and over that there's a consensus in the South Korean society that no matter the political orientation or direction, South Korea will be with the United States. I think there's that confidence, not just in Seoul, but also in Washington, that South Korea's strategic calculations are not going to change just because there's a change of government in Seoul. So I think this level of stability is going to allow South Korea and the United States to upgrade their alliance, which is going to be much more flexible than before, and at the same time comprehensive, as well as, I would say, more effective, because we'll be able to project our joint security coordination beyond the Korean Peninsula. So I think it's a win-win for everybody.
And we will be looking forward to that. Now, let's move on to the anticipated meeting between U.S. President Donald Trump and North Korean Chairman Kim Jong-un. It really didn't materialize at Gyeongju, but some analysts say this missed opportunity could lead to the resumption of behind-the-scenes working-level talks. What's your take on this possibility, Ambassador?
Yeah, I think it is a missed opportunity, but you know, there was so much on the agenda for President Donald Trump's visit to Malaysia, certainly to Japan, to South Korea, and so much was accomplished. So you know, I'm not overly surprised that Kim Jong-un was playing hard to get. He made it very clear that he had conditions for the United States to resume a dialogue with North Korea, and that condition, that major condition, is accept North Korea as a nuclear weapon state. And the U.S. position has been very clear. It continues to be very clear. Complete, verifiable denuclearization is what we're talking about. Where you put that in the spectrum of things is something else. That doesn't mean we can't talk. Doesn't mean we can't get into a dialogue. But look, it's in North Korea's interest to have a more normal relationship, certainly with the United States, and to start the inter-Korean dialogue so that they can get the benefits from that dialogue working with South Korea. So I think the behind the scenes will continue. We will continue to reach out to North Korea, whether it's the New York Channel, whether it's going through China. We're asking China, as President Lee Jae-myung has indicated to President Xi Jinping, maybe China can be a little more proactive in this regard. Get North Korea to come back to negotiations. But look, I think the key here is North Korea now is aligned with the Russian Federation. And we see what's going on with the Mutual Defense Treaty. It's not in South Korea's interest. It's not in the U.S.'s interest. But I believe also it's not in China's interest to see North Korea working that closely with the Russian Federation, providing troops, artillery shells, other weaponry to the Russian Federation for its invasion of Ukraine, a sovereign state. So I think the imperative is with the United States to continue to push for a dialogue, and I think President Donald Trump has that relationship with Kim Jong-un, and he's probably the only person I can think of who could probably come back and get Kim Jong-un to come back to the table and talk about a peaceful resolution to these issues and resuming an inter-Korean dialogue.
Right. So it seems we're going to continue to knock the door towards North Korea. And in fact, South Korean President Lee Jae-myung has said he will continue to take proactive steps to make a future U.S.-North Korea summit possible. And the recent death of former titular head of North Korea, Kim Yong-nam, actually sparked attention over whether this, quote, condolence diplomacy might come into play. What kind of options do you think Seoul right now has, Dr. Go?
Well, I think overall the chance of South Korea being able to send a condolence delegation to Pyongyang for the funeral of the former head of state, nominal head of state, Kim Yong-nam, is pretty low, I think. Kim Yong-nam was just an apparatchik in the North Korean regime. Despite his title and the symbolic nature of his post as a head of the state, he was an important figure. So I don't think this is going to pan out in a way that some proponents are advocating right now. But nonetheless, I think this offer is happening in the context of a climate of dialogue that's actually developing in the Korean Peninsula. So sure, the North Koreans are also eager to speak to South Korea yet, but if you compare the climate of dialogue here in Korea regarding North Korea to last year's, it's a day and night difference. So even though North Korea has been very consistent in revolving offers of dialogue, whether it's from Seoul or Washington, but if you look at the postures or attitudes from Seoul and North Korea towards North Korea, it's completely, Seoul and Washington towards North Korea is completely different. For instance, President Lee mentioned that it's going to emphasize engagement before denuclearization. That's part of its END initiative. And President Trump, on the way to the APEC summit, he mentioned that North Korea is a sort of a nuclear power, which is not quite what North Korea wanted to hear, but nonetheless, it's probably North Koreans thinking it's better than nothing. So overall, there's a lot of positive, from the North Korean perspective, a lot of positive news coming from Seoul and Washington for dialogue. And North Korea, I think it's listening to this and they are taking this all into consideration. So I think it's likely that North Koreans are going to react to this, but not in a negative manner. They probably going to reciprocate this gesture in some other gesture. Might not be to the level that lives up to the expectation in Seoul and Washington, but nonetheless, it's going to be a step in the direction that Seoul and Washington expects.
Right. Just as our Dr. Go mentioned, President Trump's remarks on, recognizing North Korea as a sort of nuclear power and even suggesting sanctions relief, Pyongyang really hasn't showed any response yet. And Ambassador Trani, you've mentioned that North Korea seems to be playing hard to get. With this situation, then what kind of offer might open Pyongyang's door to dialogue?
Well, we have so many tools available to us. Certainly, sanctions were mentioned a few minutes ago, and that's something. This is very clear. The Hanoi summit did not succeed based on President Donald Trump's unwillingness to lift those sanctions, at least to ease those sanctions imposed in 2016 and subsequent to 2016. Those are biting sanctions, but also a path to normal relations with the United States. Obviously, inter-Korean dialogue, resuming an inter-Korean dialogue, and the benefits that will accrue to North Korea. We're talking about dealing with the international financial institutions. So we're talking about economic development assistance, et cetera. So I think there's so much there available to Kim Jong-un, but most immediately would also be a declaration to end the Korean War. I mean, whether it's a peace treaty or indeed something along those lines. This is what North Korea is interested in, seeing some material benefit and some movement on the part of in this case, the United States. Not only the lifting of sanctions, but movement towards a more normal relationship, state-to-state relationship, economic development assistance, indeed security assurances. And I know when we look at Ukraine, those security assurances that were given to Ukraine from the Russian Federation meant nothing in 1994. So, but in this case, we would ensure that these security assurances apply to North Korea. So I think there's so much there for Kim Jong-un to resume a dialogue with President Donald Trump. I think it will happen.
But clearly, the next move needs to be bold enough, to break through the silence from the North moving forward. But as for now, we will have to conclude our discussion here at this point. Thank you so much for your insights, Ambassador Detrani.
Right. Thank you.
And of course, Dr. Go.
My pleasure.
And that'll be all from us on Within the Frame tonight. Be sure to tune in again next time as we continue to explore the stories that matter. Till then, stay informed and engaged.